introduce our guest speaker for today, Reverend Steve Adkins, the pastor of the People's Church of Divine Prophecy. He's been a spiritual worker for the last 28 years, and he's worked on 3 continents demonstrating his spiritual gifts and performing healing. Please join me in welcoming Steve Adkins.
Yes, when I look back over the past 20 years of my life, I can see quite a bit of difference in what I was doing 20 years ago and what I'm doing today. Just as many challenges in my life. I get a lot of comfort out of reading books, but most of the books that I read were written before 1940 because they seem to be more factual, they seem to be more condensed around the subject. I was reading one the other day somebody had given me back when I was a student in the 1980s, and it talked about the phases of mediumship, and they talked about how they had discerned over 74 types of mediumship. And today, and they've proven that many types, and it listed every one of them in there. And one of the oddest ones was it was called the egg test. And they would crack the white of an egg into a glass of water, and the medium would look at it, and they would see spirit faces in it, and they would tell the people the spirit faces that they saw, and they were proven life after death because they were always somebody's relative. And I'd never heard of that method before, but it just shows how interested people were in the 1800s in this phenomenon of spiritualism. Well, this is an open spiritual church. I am primarily a spiritualist. That doesn't mean that I don't think other religions have value. It's just the one that I'm most familiar with at this point in my life. So it's the one that I tend to speak about the most. One thing about spiritualism is it says that they are a way, not the way. So if you find comfort or guidance in something that I say, then I'm happy for that. Today's talk I chose to talk about, the subject I chose to talk about today was on one of the 10 laws of right as tranced by Emma Hardage Britton to the realm, the earth realm. This was done in 1861 in a seance where she dropped through the 10 laws of right. In the beginning, they were very archaic in their wording and very hard to understand, so as a result, most people didn't embrace them, and even today, most people aren't that familiar with them. The original statement said, speak truth every word of thought spoken or acted, but reserve harsh or unpleasing truths where they would needlessly wound the feelings of others. Today's statement, it says most of that, but it changes a little bit. Express truth in every word and deed, remembering always to keep harsh or hurtful truths to yourself when they would carelessly hurt the feelings of another. All 10 laws of right are contained in the blue pamphlet on the back table back there if you would like to take one home and read more about them. And there's quite a bit of information on the internet if you want us to hear the story of all 10 of them. But what this particular law of right, if you will, says to me is it speaks mostly about tolerance. It teaches me to endeavor to have tolerance with people. Because whenever you interact with somebody, or whenever, I'll just keep it on myself, whenever I interact with somebody, I'm always trying to figure out the hows and whys of who I'm talking to. And sometimes my mind goes to an area that isn't that flattering to the person that I'm speaking to say the least. And within this rule of tolerance and the statement of the 4th law of right, it says, keep harsh and hurtful truths to yourself when they would carelessly hurt the feelings of another. That's the true essence of tolerance. Because even though it's true, even though it's as plain as the nose on yours and their face, It's not your job to point it out to them if they're not willing to hear it at that time. All that does is create resentment. So, in effect, tolerance is probably one of the greatest things that you should cultivate in your life, because it leads to true spiritual understanding. It allows you to disengage the physical mind. It allows you to stop interacting with people in a fashion that binds you to them. With tolerance, you can allow somebody to be who they're going to be and allow them to move on, or allow them to continue to be that way without feeling a need to adjust it or, monkey with it a little bit or correct them in any fashion. Tolerance allows you to stand back and just view it in the way it was presented. What is said about tolerance is that tolerance is the key to material success, to spiritual attainment, and to greater progression. Once it's learned, we truly become souls and torches of spiritual light. We are not bound by commitment, and we are not bound by actions that are not our own, with a sense of tolerance. Elevated teachers in the spirit world search for tolerant souls on the physical level to express themselves through, to give intuition to, and so that you can deliver it either on a one-to-one basis or in groups. So this is something that the spirit realm looks for when it comes around people, to see the degree that they can work through them. With myself, they're going to find somebody that's on again, off again. Sometimes I'm pretty good with it, other times I'm not. So they're going to have to make an appointment, I guess, to work with me. But that's just the way it is. And I had spoken about this earlier, but I've been being involved with family members on this level myself. And, you can see them creating issues for themselves, and then they ask you, well, what should I do? And you want to tell them right up front what they should do, but you can't, because it would just hurt their feelings. And in some cases, when you're dealing with circumstances of abuse between somebody that you love by someone that they love, it's very difficult indeed, because even though you keep pointing it out to them, they continually re-engage in that process. And then they call you again and ask you what they should do. And it's pretty plain what they should do. But they don't have the ability to do it, otherwise they would have done it by now. So if you keep pointing it out to them, all you do is hurt their feelings. All you do is make them feel less of who they are. What you have to do is, again, employ the trait and the quality of tolerance, and see and ask for higher guidance. Not tell them what you want to tell them as a father. Tell them what you want to tell them as a brother. But tell them what God wants them to hear at that time. And through tolerance and disengaging your own personal value system, you allow that intuitive inspiration to come through. And what I told them the last time was, you need to sit down and figure out what you want in this situation, because there's so many people telling this person what to do that they don't know what to do. There's so many varying stories, from the severe to doing nothing. So I finally told this person, I said, you need to sit down and decide what you want. And I used their name. I said, you need to figure out what so-and-so wants, and you need to figure out how you're going to feel comfortable with this. Because only in admitting the truth to yourself of where you want to be and how you want to get there, will you receive true guidance from a higher mind. And he sat there and he thought about that for a little bit. And whether this situation is still continuing on, he's being abused by his spouse, not the other way around. He has seemed to come to a peace with it, and he seems to be working it out. So with this sense of tolerance, you allow God to work in people's lives. You allow the person to see God working within their lives, and you allow God to work in your life. And sometimes the act of tolerance is just doing nothing. And that's hardest to do sometimes, just to do nothing. Because as a human being, we feel the need to do something. And many times it's emotion-based, not spirit-based. So when I read this fourth law of right, as I said, it speaks volumes to me about keeping harsh or harmful truths to yourself when they would hurt others. I mean, it's really, I guess it's within us to feel self-righteous about something. Aha, I'm right. And you want to tell the other people how right you are and prove how right you are. But that's not how it works. That's not the spiritual aspect of things. So I would ask you to think about this and take one of those blue pamphlets in the back and read the laws of right. And what I do with those is I read through them until one really stands out for the day. A different one will stand out each day based on where your state of mind is. And it'll give you something to balance the day's actions against when you read that truth. And if you don't feel comfortable reading that, I would encourage you to take a book of some sort and read a spiritual passage before you leave the house, right before you leave the house. This little book here that I read out of, I read every day. It's got this saying for each day of the week, a meditation for each day of the week, and I put it on my emails. That's where that comes from. That saying at the top of all the emails. And I always save it till last. And I almost get it. Sometimes I'm running late, and I'll read that later. And then the thought came to me, oh, you don't have enough time for God this morning. Huh? It only takes about a minute to read it. So that's why somebody, and my wife says, well, why don't you do it first? I said, because it requires me to give time to God right before I engage in my busy day. That's my commitment. So it's as important when I read it as what I read in my life. So think about that. Read something of a spiritual or uplifting nature, whether it's poetry, whether it's a spiritual saying, whether it's out of the Bible, whatever it is that gives you a moment of comfort and a moment of connection to spirituality, to the presence of God within your life, as you get ready to start your day. Now, that's no guarantee that your day is going to be all roses and honey, because many times it begins to be a challenge the moment you get out on I-4, the moment that you get to work, or the moment something happens as you're running out the door late and you have to stop. But you'll find that what I have found by doing this is that at the end of the day, it's nowhere near as stressful. It's nowhere near as challenging at the end of the day. And the day seems to go just a little bit smoother, even though it's still challenging. Because you started the day with your mind connected to the higher mind. And that's what all this worship is about that we do, what all the religions of the world are about, is giving us a personal experience with God, giving us that comfort and feeling the nearness of our idea of God, not my idea of God, but your idea of God, giving you that personal experience with God as you get ready to start the day. And you'll find yourself through the day beginning to refer back to that which you read, because you've put that thought in your mind to gauge the day by. And it'll come up at times when you really need it. And it begins to be this gradual building process. And you begin to find comfort and a peace, even though the world around you is getting more difficult. You're still going to react emotionally. You're still going to react as a human being. But you will have this underlying feeling of comfort within your life about yourself. Even though if those around you are having difficulty, you need to maintain that feeling of comfort about yourself. Because when you lose your own spirituality, it gets to be a mess. It gets to be a mess from beginning to end. So your challenge at the beginning of every day and the beginning of every opportunity to grow, we'll say, is to maintain that comfort of your own spirit, that comfort of your own spiritual belief. Because when you get done being human, that's what you have. That's what I did not have for a long time in my life. I was only cast about by the situations in my life. I had no higher-minded guidance, even though I grew up Catholic, and it's a beautiful philosophy. But as I became more and more enmeshed in life and the physical challenges of life, I put all that aside and began to work off of my own mind. So you need to have that conscious spiritual discipline. It gives you the ability to back out, to see a different view, or to just stop doing what you're doing. So I ask you to take this into account. And I ask you to find some spiritual text that you find comfort with. As I get ready to close my talk, I'll read something here that I've read before. And it's a passage called On the 23rd Psalm. We all know what the 23rd Psalm is. Yea, though I walk through the valley of death, I shall fear no evil, and the rest of that. And this is a take of the spiritualist on the 23rd Psalm. And it says, in pastures green, not always, sometimes he who knoweth best, in kindness leadeth me, in weary ways where heavy shadows be. And by still waters, no, not always so. Oft times the tempest round me blow, and o'er my soul the waves and billows go. But when the storms beat loudest and I cry aloud for help, the Master standeth by, and whispers to my soul, lo, it is I. So where he leads me, I can safely go, and in the blessed hereafter I shall know why in his wisdom he hath led me so. Thank you.